We're ready.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to, went off script there. Let's call to order the Development Review Commission meeting for April 20th, 2026. Before we call roll, are there any changes to the agenda needed? No changes. Will staff please call the roll?
Chair Lindstrom,
Present.
Commissioner Dews,
Here.
Commissioner Bates. Here. Commissioner Leek.
Here.
Commissioner Salunke.
Present.
And Vice Chair Mino is absent this evening.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 3, we'll be approving the minutes for March 16th, 2026. Are there any notable changes to the minutes required? Will someone please make a motion to accept the minutes for March 16th, 2026?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes from March 16th, 2026.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Staff, please call the roll.
Chair Lindstrom,
Yes.
Commissioner Dews,
Yes.
Commissioner Bates,
Yes.
Commissioner Salunke,
Yes.
Commissioner Leek,
Yes.
5-0.
Great. Okay, we're moving on to item number 4. So on to public hearing. So I'd now like to open the public hearing for LU 25-0045, a request for a major variance to enclose and expand an existing non-conforming carport approximately 1.2 feet from the rear property line and within a required setback. The site is located at 757 4th Street. Staff coordinator is Ellen Davis, senior planner. And now turn it over to Attorney Miller.
Thank you, Chair Lindstrom. The following procedure for public hearings on development applications has been adopted by the City of Lake Oswego pursuant to LOC Chapter 50.07 and ORS 197.797. Applicants and interested persons are encouraged to familiarize themselves with these procedures to assist in presenting testimony to the Commission. A land use request involves the application of criteria and standards listed in the staff report, which is available from staff 10 days prior to the initial evidentiary hearing. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward those applicable criteria or other such criteria contained within the Lake Oswego Comprehensive Plan and land use regulations that you believe apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford everyone an opportunity to respond precludes appeal to the City Council and the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. And the failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the Commission to respond precludes an action for damages in circuit court. And now I will request the Commissioner's declarations, please.
I'm Helen Leek. I'm a realtor in Lake Oswego. I have not been to the site. I have not had any ex parte communication. I do not know the parties involved. I have no financial interest or conflict of interest in the case, and I have no bias.
Hi, I'm Meetal Salunke. I'm a landscape architect. I do not know the site, nor have I visited the site as a part of this application. I have not had any ex parte communication with any parties, nor do I know the parties involved. I do not have any financial interest or conflict of interest or a bias to declare.
My name is Larry Lindstrom. I'm a construction executive. I have not visited the site. I've had no ex parte communications. I do know some of the parties involved. I do not have a financial interest or conflict of interest in this case, and I do not have a bias.
My name is Kristen Bates. I'm an attorney. I have not visited the site. I have had no ex parte communications regarding this matter. I do not have a bias, and I have no financial interest in this matter.
My name is John Dews. I'm a retired architect. I have not visited the site. Excuse me. I have had no ex parte contacts, nor do I have any bias or financial conflict in regards to this application.
Thank you. Chair Lindstrom, just one follow-up question. You stated that you know some of the parties. Could you just briefly describe that relationship and who they are?
Ralph excuse me if I butcher your last name, Ralph, but Ralph Tauran? Close? Excuse me. Yes, we worked together he was an architect on a project I built roughly 4 years ago. I was a project executive on that project.
Okay, thank you. All right, and now I'll invite any challenges to the commissioner's declarations based on conflict of interest or bias or ex parte contact. Seeing none in the audience, do we have anybody raising their hand online? Okay, thank you. All right, now we'll go into the hearing procedure. First, staff's presentation, or staff will present, after which they can answer any questions regarding their presentation on the application, and then we'll have the applicant's testimony. Third will be public testimony, followed by a rebuttal by the applicant, and then fifth, the commission's deliberations and decision. The commissioners are reminded to save comments, opinions, and debate for the deliberations portion of the hearing, and I will further outline the public testimony process when we get to that section of the hearing, and I'll pass it back to the chair.
Thank you, Attorney Miller. I would now like to request staff's presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ellen Davis. I am a senior planner for the city. And the case before you tonight is a request for a major variance to expand and enclose an existing non-conforming carport into a two-car garage. The site is located at 757 4th Street. It's right across the street from the city library. And we'll be focusing on a carport that's located at the east side of the site, accessed from the alley between 3rd Street and 4th Street. This is a picture of the existing carport. It is non-conforming to the 15-foot rear yard setback that's required for a garage or vehicle opening. Currently, it's located about 1.2 feet from the rear property line. The applicant's proposal would expand the carport's width by 4 feet and fully enclose the structure by adding a garage door. This is the proposed garage plan shown here on the right. Because the existing carport is already non-conforming to the rear yard setback, enclosing the structure with a garage door and expanding the width by 4 feet requires approval of a major variance. The criteria to review major variance requests start with the question of whether there is an unnecessary hardship preventing reasonable use of the property. Past variance approvals and longstanding interpretation hold that a two-car garage that is enclosed is a reasonable expectation of a residential dwelling. So there is a hardship in not being able to have two covered and enclosed parking spaces on the site. And next, we look at whether the hardship is unnecessary based on the considerations listed in the code. The first consideration looks at physical circumstances of the site. In this case, the physical circumstance is the existing site layout. In order to construct a fully code-compliant two-car garage that meets the 15-foot minimum rear yard setback required by today's code, the existing carport would need to be demolished. About 14 feet of the existing footprint would need to be paved as a driveway, and a new garage would be constructed in what is currently a pervious lawn backyard area. This would increase impervious surfaces on the site and change the pattern of development. The applicant states that widening and enclosing the existing structure minimizes those changes to the built environment. Staff agrees that the existing layout is a physical circumstance of the site. I'll also note one other item that we look at under this criterion is that the hardship is not self-created by the applicant themselves. In this case, the applicant estimates that the existing carport was built about 100 years ago, long before today's zoning regulations. So staff agrees that this unnecessary hardship is not self-created. This unnecessary hardship criterion is met. The second criterion we look at is whether the proposal would be injurious to the neighborhood. The applicant prepared this vicinity map demonstrating that garages located within the minimum rear yard setback, similar to this proposal, fairly typical within the neighborhood, with about 5 similar detached garages located within this block, indicating that the proposed request would not be out of character for the neighborhood. Retaining the existing structure also preserves the current pattern of development, minimizes grading and new impervious surfaces. And lastly, I'll note that no public comments were received. Absence of objection from neighbors can provide some indication that no material injury to the surrounding neighborhood is expected. Staff finds that this criterion is met. The last criterion requires that the major variance request is the minimum variance necessary to alleviate the hardship. This proposal is a 4-foot expansion and enclosure of an existing carport, turning it into a garage approximately 22 feet in width to improve usability for 2 vehicles using the garage on a daily basis, making sure they don't have to worry about door dings for each other. It fully complies with all dimensional and design standards except for the rear yard setback due to the carport's existing location within that rear yard setback. Staff finds that the requested variance to widen and enclose the existing carport into a 2-car garage in the same location is the minimum variance necessary to achieve reasonable use of the property. All 3 criteria are met, so staff recommends approval. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No questions. Okay. So I'd now like to request the applicant's testimony. I'd like to note that they have up to 20 minutes, not including questions from the commission. So please note the green light means time is active, yellow means 30 seconds, red light means time is up, and flashing red means you are over time. Attorney Miller, do you have one more portion to speak?
Happy to do that now.
Okay.
So I'll just briefly outline the public testimony process, and then we'll get started with the applicant's testimony. So for the public testimony process, after the applicant has concluded their initial portion, that'll be parties in support, parties opposed, parties neither in favor nor opposed. Every individual will be allowed up to 5 minutes, and groups and neighborhood associations will be allowed up to 10 minutes, and those limits don't include questions from the commission. Testimony by attorneys, representatives, or witnesses on behalf of or as part of anyone's testimony count toward their limit. Any person in attendance may cede their time for testimony to another, but no one gets more than 10 minutes total. And all testimony, evidence, and comments during the public testimony portion should be directed to the chair.
Thank you, Attorney Miller. And you may begin.
Hi, I'm Ralph Tarrant, architect. My address is 160 Oswego Summit, Lake Oswego, 97035. And with me tonight is the owner's representative and project manager on this project, Tyler McClaughlin.
Yep, McClary.
And anyway, Tyler and I can hopefully answer any questions that you might have. And what I'd like to say, just in terms of interest of time, I think Ellen described our project very thoroughly and excellently. We're just happy to be here tonight to hopefully move on. And I'd just like to say that we're happy to see that we have a recommendation for approval tonight. And if I can answer any questions about this project, I'd be happy to. Otherwise, I would say that we are complete with our presentation. Tyler, would you like to add anything?
No,
or?
I'm good.
Okay. So we're open.
Commissioners have any questions? No? Wow, that was probably the fastest public hearing ever. So I guess, yeah, I guess, well, I think that we need to move into declarations, or excuse me,
So you have public testimony.
Yeah, is there
Yes.
any public testimony?
still open public testimony. So do we have any other speakers for or against, or not opposed or against?
No.
Okay. It's no questions at all, so I guess we can move into, can I close the public hearing then, if we have no other commentaries?
So, as there was no, and there were no comments received on this, is that correct? That is correct. No written comments, okay. Okay, so there were no comments and no one who testified, so unless the applicant would like to leave the record open, either for your own, to submit additional evidence or to submit additional argument, I think we can go ahead and close the hearing, but I'd like to ask the applicant.
I'm happy with closing the hearing, please.
Well, if no one submitted public comments, people who testified or participated, so I think we're okay. Okay, just for the record, because no one participated in public comment, submitted public comment in writing, or participated in the hearing today, we can close the record without offering a continuance, other than to the applicant, who was the only participant.
Thank you. Now I'd like to close the public hearing for LU 250045 and move the commission into deliberations.
I think this is pretty straightforward. It conforms with other applications in the neighborhood. As they say, I think it's a no-brainer.
Agreed. In fact, I'll just make a motion to approve LU 25-0045 with the conditions as listed in the staff report.
I second that motion.
We have a second. Can staff please call the roll?
I just want to real quick note that Commissioner Sangri has arrived, and the role for public hearing 2545 would be Chair Lindstrom,
Yes.
Commissioner Dews,
Yes.
Commissioner Bates,
Yes.
Commissioner Salinke,
Yes.
Commissioner Leek,
Yes.
and Sangri would be abstain.
Chair, your microphone isn't, or sorry, Commissioner Sanger, your microphone isn't on. If you could just read that again into the record.
I'm going to abstain.
Thank you.
So the motion has received a majority vote, and this will be the tentative decision. The final decision will be made upon the adoption of the written findings.
And for right now, the commission, the date for adoption of the final, of the findings, it would be May 4th. And we can revisit that date after the second hearing.
Thank you. Now I will move right into, I'd like to open the public hearing for LU 25-0036, a request for a minor development permit for 2 mixed-use buildings, office and residential, in the WLG District, and removal of 22 trees for construction. The site is located at 16650 Boones Ferry Road. The staff coordinator is Evan Fransted, senior planner. I'd like to turn it over to Attorney Miller.
Thank you, Chair Lindstrom. Again, the procedure for public hearings on development applications has been adopted by the City of Lake Oswego pursuant to LOC 50.07 and ORS 197.797. A land use request involves the application of criteria and standards listed in the staff report, which is available from staff 10 days prior to the initial evidentiary hearing for this hearing as well. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward those applicable criteria or other such criteria contained within the Lake Oswego Comprehensive Plan and Land Use Regulations, which you believe apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford everyone an opportunity to respond precludes appeal to the City Council and the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue, and the failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the commission to respond will preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Now, can we please have the commissioners' declarations for this hearing?
My name is Helen Leek. I'm a realtor in the city of Lake Oswego. I have not visited the site per se, but I have driven past it many, many, many times. I have had no ex parte communication with the parties involved. I do know the parties involved. I do not have a financial interest or a conflict of interest in this case, and I do not have a bias. And the reason I know the parties involved is it would be pretty hard not to know Stephen Kerr after being in real estate in Lake Oswego for 30-some years, so our paths have crossed.
Hi, I'm Mital Sarunke. I'm a landscape architect. I am familiar with the site, but I have not visited it as a part of this application. I have not had any ex parte communication with the parties, nor do I know the parties involved. I do not have any financial interest, conflict of interest, or bias to declare.
My name is Larry Lindstrom. I'm a construction executive. I have not visited the site. I have had no ex parte communications with the applicants involved. I do know some of the parties involved. I do not have a financial interest or conflict of interest in this case, and I do not have a bias. Like
Yes.
me to explain how
Just
I know.
briefly.
So
Thank you.
the architect on this application and I had worked on a project together roughly 4 years ago. He was the architect, I was the general contractor. Thanks.
My name is Kristen Bates. I'm a real estate attorney. I have not visited the site, although I know where it is generally. I've had no ex parte communications with the parties. I do not have a bias, and I have no financial interest.
My name is John Dews. I'm a retired architect. I drive by this site frequently, but I have not visited it as part of this application. I've had no ex parte contacts. I have no bias, nor do I have any financial conflict of interest.
My name is Dwight Sangre. I am a retired civil engineer. I'm familiar with the site. I have not visited the site. I have not had any ex parte discussions with any of the parties involved. I have no financial or professional involvement with any of the parties, and I do not consider that I have any bias at all.
Thank you, commissioners. And now I would invite any challenges to the commissioners' declarations based on bias, ex parte contacts, or conflicts of interest. Seeing no hands, anybody online? No. Okay, thank you. All right, this hearing will proceed under the same format. We'll have staff's presentation first, and staff may answer any questions regarding their presentation on the application. Then applicant's testimony, followed by public testimony. Fourth will be the rebuttal by the applicant, if any. And then fifth, the commission will deliberate and decide. And again, commissioners are reminded to save comments, opinions, and debate for the deliberations portion of the hearing. And we'll go over the public testimony process again when we get to that point.
Thank you, Attorney Miller. I'd now like to invite staff to give their presentation.
Thank you, Chair Lindstrom and members of the commission. My mic works, great. All right, so my name is Evan Fransted. I'm a senior planner. Before us tonight is LU 25-0036. I'll give a brief summary of the staff report. Since the staff report was published on April 10th, we received new written testimony. Those exhibits are G501 through G508. Those are all in opposition. The comments expressed concerns regarding the proposed tree removal, lack of parking, and design of the buildings. I'll discuss those items as I move through my presentation. All right, so here's the site. It is The site is approximately 27,680 square feet with frontage on Boones Ferry Road, a major arterial. The site is zoned WLG RMU. Properties to the north and east are also WLG RMU and developed with commercial and residential dwellings. The properties to the west and northwest are WLG OC and are vacant or developed with commercial and residential dwellings. The properties to the south are zoned WLG OC, WLG R-2.5, or located in Clackamas County. Those properties are vacant or developed with residential dwellings. And here's a site plan that shows the layout of the proposal with the buildings and parking lot. The proposal includes construction of 2 buildings and a parking lot with 23 parking spaces. 3 of those parking spaces will be removed in the future to provide access to the property to the south. The 4 residential units each include a single-car garage, so that's 4 additional parking spaces. The structures comply with the 6-foot required front yard setback, special street setback along Boones Ferry Road, and a 25-foot setback from the abutting properties to the south. The public improvements include a 8-foot wide meandering sidewalk, a 5-foot wide landscaping buffer, a 5-foot wide bike lane, 2 11-foot wide travel lanes in both directions, and a 6-foot median. 4 covered bicycle parking spaces will be provided, 1 in each unit of Building B, and 1 bike rack with 2 bicycle parking spaces will be located outside of the west side of Building A, complying with the bicycle parking standards. Exhibits G501 and G505 express concerns regarding the lack of parking and how that will negatively impact the neighborhood. As discussed in the staff report, there is no minimum parking requirement in our code anymore. That was removed as a state mandate. As a city, we cannot dictate how many parking spaces they have. It's up to the developer to provide what they think they need. So that addresses those comments. All right, here's the circulation plan. This plan shows pedestrian access from the new sidewalk along Boones Ferry Road to the main entrances of the buildings, down to the parking lot, and it actually connects, the walkway connects to the property to the east. Vehicle access is provided to the abutting properties to the east and south. The one to the east is a 24-foot wide access easement that connects to the existing development. And the 20-foot wide access to the south is required by code. Exhibit G500 expressed concerns regarding the proposed 20-foot wide access easement to his property and requested a 24-foot wide access easement instead. That's the same as the east and some other developments have happened when they're connecting parking lots. And he'd also would like the whole connection, the pavement to the property line, like a stub out, like you see in subdivisions. The reason why the 20-foot is provided here is because there's no parking lot dimension requirement. So the other ones were the reason why there's 24 feet to the Fickin property next door, the boulder is what it's called. The reason why that's 24 feet wide is because they have standard size parking spaces that are 90 degrees. And so for two-way access aisle vehicle, it's 24 feet. If they would have provided compact spaces and it was a single lane, it would have been 20 feet. So the 24 feet is dictated by the parking lot dimensional standards, not by the access requirements. This requirement in the Westlake Grove sign overlay is simply just to provide a connection between parking lots. It's a driveway. So unless the parking lot standards require 24 feet, the standard is 20. So that's why that's there. All right, so building A is a 5,000 square foot single story commercial office building. Office uses in the Westlake Grove RMU are limited to uses that serve customers or clients on the premises. The applicant's narrative state they understand the standard. This building complies with the 30-foot maximum height. And here's building B. It is 4,722 square feet, and it's a three-story mixed-use building with office space on the ground floor and 4 residential units on the upper floors. This building also complies with the 35-foot maximum height. And here's the renderings from the north elevation. It's a view from across Boones Ferry Road. The proposed buildings are in the English country architectural style, borrowing and incorporating elements from the American rustic and arts and crafts styles. This design is similar to the scale materials to the architectural styles of the buildings and the abutting properties to the east, the boulder, and the English cottage style bank of the west, located across the street to the northeast on the corner of Boones Ferry Road and Madrona Street. Building components are consistent with the English country and American rustic arts and crafts style with complementary proportions. The windows are proportional to each other and the buildings themselves. The windows, eaves, and parapets are vertically oriented with clear commercial storefront windows along the ground floor. Buildings include earth tones materials with gray stone at the base, white shingle and stucco siding, brown lap siding, board and batten siding, and stained heavy timber that provide a variety of materials, colors, and textures. The facade along Boones Ferry Road does not include any blank walls and does not exceed 25 linear feet of uninterrupted wall plane, which complies with the Westlake Grove design standards. The ground floor windows of the storefront have divided light. The upper floors include single hung with simulated divided light, which does not meet the requirement. The requirement is double hung or divided light. So condition A1 requires the applicant to submit revised elevation plans that show the windows to be either double hung or include divided light. And here's the south elevation, the view from the south. The two proposed buildings include different scale, massing, and detailing from each other. Building A is a smaller single-story building with a steeper pitch roof of 12-12 with prominent stone cladding. Building B is larger with 3 stories and a shallower pitched roof at 9-12, and a gable roof with board and batten shingles on second floor and third as the most noticeable feature. The buildings include durable and high-quality exterior cladding from the permitted materials list with a combination of rustic stone, hardy lap, shingles, and board and batten siding. The stucco siding and heavy timber are on the gable ends, except stucco is shown on the east and south elevations of Building B on the non-gable ends, which is not permitted in the overlay, and that is required to be corrected with condition A1. Exhibit G504 expressed opposition to the building design, but did not go into any detail about what they didn't like about the design and didn't cite any standards that were not met. Staff finds that the design meets the Westlake Grove design standards. And for tree removal, so there are 44 trees on site that are 6 inches in diameter or more. The applicant is proposing to remove 22 trees for development purposes. In addition, 8 invasive trees will be removed through an invasive tree removal permit that's not reviewed as the application tonight. So 14 trees will be retained on site. Of the 14, there are 3 substantial trees, including 2 Douglas fir trees and a deodar cedar, that are considered as contributing to the landmark status of the Westlake Grove. Exhibits 502 and through 508 express opposition to the proposed tree removal. They state that the tree removal, this application does not comply with the type 2 criterion 3 shown on the screen. Due to the significant trees, visibility within 300 feet of the property, the trees serve as a screen between the residential properties to the south, or the trees are part of a stand of trees. Staff finds that 16 of the 22 trees proposed for removal do not meet criterion 3. So I think we agree with many of the comments that were submitted because they're either considered significant, 12 of which are, will alter the neighborhood skyline, serve as a screen between the residential properties to the south, or are part of stand of trees, or are street trees. So these 16 trees require an exception to criterion 3. In this case, the exception B, which is highlighted, applies. And that exception requires that all alternatives to removal are considered with alternative plans. And going back to the tree removal plan, the applicant's narrative states that alternative plans were considered to preserve the trees and none were feasible. It's a little hard to tell on this, maybe on the screen, but there's a yellow circle that shows a tree protection, and it shows how much of the site is covered by the tree's roots and what would be required to actually protect those trees. The site, as I said before, it's relatively small for commercial development. It's 27,680 square feet, and it has an irregular shape, like a pie shape, which limits development options. The proposal also meets all minimum development requirements, including the minimum density requirement of 4 residential units. The location of the proposed buildings, the public improvements with new sidewalk, the reciprocal access, and utilities limit the options to preserve trees. This plan demonstrates that there is insufficient space to configure the development in order to avoid critical impacts and retain any of the 16 trees. Staff finds that there's no reasonable alternatives to removal of these trees to allow the property to be used as is permitted in the zone. The type 2 tree removal criteria are met. 32 mitigation trees are required. 16 must be native. And here's the landscaping plan. The proposal includes planting native trees with 2 Douglas fir trees, 2 western hemlock, 5 western red cedar trees that will grow to a significant size, as well as smaller Pacific dogwood trees, native shrubs, grasses, ferns, and ground cover. There's a 15-foot wide buffer along the south where large trees will be planted, and a 6-foot tall fence will be required along the south property line that butts residential properties. The parking lot includes landscaping bulbs with shade trees at the end of each bay. The site contains 40.1% open space and landscaping set aside, which meets the requirement of 40%. 9 street trees will be planted in compliance with the street tree standards. 13 mitigation trees are proposed, not counting street trees, when, as I previously said, 34 are required. The applicant is requesting payment in lieu of planting for the missing mitigation trees. Staff concurs with the applicant that the planting all 34 mitigation trees is not practical on this site due to the smaller lot size, configuration of the lot, and preservation of the existing trees. However, there is sufficient space to plant an additional 3 trees that they don't show on the landscaping plan along the south property line. And this is required with condition A11. So conditions A11 and 12 require a final landscaping plan to be submitted and reviewed by staff that show a total of 16 mitigation trees, all of which must be native. And they need to pay into the tree fund for the remaining 18 trees. And this concludes in conclusion, staff finds the proposal can be made to comply with all applicable criteria with the recommended conditions. Staff recommends approval of LU 24-0036 with conditions. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Any commissioners have any questions?
On the next, I think the last slide, there was at the south side, it says rock future removal. Is there going to be a pathway from this project to the properties to the south of it?
Yes, there's a 20-foot wide vehicle access easement to provide the required parking lot connection as is required in West Lake Grove. Go back to my...
Right there. Well,
I'm sorry.
Oh, the tree
So
one.
the circulation plan that I discussed?
I was just curious as to what that, oh, I see, right there. Okay.
Yeah, so that's the driveway connection.
But nothing is there right now.
No. Yeah. No, okay.
Hi, I'm curious if the city preference is for tree fund, or is there anything in the code that allows for off-site mitigation and how that's evaluated?
Yeah, the tree code allows you, if a property owner owns another property, they can plant on there, but as far as I know, they don't. In their application, they requested to pay into the tree fund.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
So I'll now be requesting the applicant's testimony. Please note that you will have up to 20 minutes, not including questions from the commission. As I stated earlier, so the green light means time is active, yellow means 30 seconds, red light means time is up, and flashing red means you are over time. I'll turn it over to Attorney Miller.
Thank you. And after the applicant's testimony, we'll go into public testimony, starting with parties in support, followed by parties opposed. Finally, parties neither in favor nor opposed. Individuals are allowed up to 5 minutes. Groups and neighborhood associations are allowed up to 10 minutes. And those time limits do not include questions from the commission. But testimony by attorneys, representatives, or other witnesses on behalf of any party are included in those time limits. Any person in attendance may cede their time for testimony to another but that does not exceed any individual's testimony or can't extend it for more than 10 minutes. And finally, all testimony, evidence, and comments during the public testimony portion should be directed to the chair.
Thank you, Attorney Miller. You may proceed.
My name is Hal Keever. That's Keever. I'm with HGK Consulting. I'm the applicant's representative, and I reside at 10984 Northwest Zermatt Court, Portland, Oregon, 97229.
Ralph Tarrin, architect, 160 Oswego Summit, Lake Oswego, 97035.
Hopefully we can keep this short tonight. We've worked with Evan quite a bit over the last 9 months in this application. And we've reviewed the staff report and the conditions of approval and concur with the conditions of approval. We do have a concern in this project, and that is not the required easement to the south, as Evan just explained, but by which it was, I guess, mandated. And some of that is, if you can look at the screen, or I'm not sure, but, wait a minute. Getting used to this. These two lots here, right off the Upper Drive, were developed as part of this lot by what you'll probably hear tonight from the owner or past owner. And that was basically an illegal partition or unallowed partition that did not provide access to the green square, which is requiring us to provide access to Boones Ferry Road. Our project owner is in concurrence with the 20-foot wide easement. We're somewhat disappointed in that the easement's requiring to take up 2 parking spaces, which is fairly limited in this area, but we agreed to do so. But, what we don't want to do is run into a situation when the green square is developed that we have a burden on our project through reciprocal access agreements currently, so that it becomes a parking problem or a circulation problem onto Boones Ferry Road. The Boones Ferry Road area, as you probably are well aware, is right in, right out at our particular location, and then we have a reciprocal easement to the east. So in the city's comprehensive plan and transportation plan, you'll see that the extension of this street to Upper Drive is planned, and therefore there's also potential access through these properties to Upper Drive, which we encourage most of that access to go through. Again, we're not opposed to sharing access. What we are concerned about is the impact on our tenants and so forth here, depending upon what the green square is developed into. And so we ask you cautiously to look at this when you review that development application to make sure that our project isn't negatively impacted by that. I think you're going to hear from the property owner tonight about his, unhappiness with the situation, but he created that by developing these 2 lots without access to the remainder parcel. Now, technically, that is illegal, but the county and or city allowed that to happen. Maybe it was an oversight. So I think that's about what I have to say. Otherwise, again, we agree with Evan's staff report and conditions of approval. Ralph?
Thanks, Hal. I don't believe I have anything to add either. I have worked with Evan on this project as well as others, and walked through the design, and I don't know how familiar you are with the West Lake Grove Design District, but it's probably the most strict in all of Lake Oswego. And I frankly did the buildings right across the street, the white stucco ones, the English cottage and English country buildings, actually for the same owner. And so, and then there's another building that has been approved right next door a couple of years ago, and that's more in the Oregon rustic style. And so on this side of the street, when the development went into us right to the east, rather than replicate what we did across the street, thought, okay, let's see how we can infill that with something that relates to both. And also, in terms of visibility and whatever, you know, we've got a median right in front of us on Boones Ferry Road. And in terms of us having a commercial structure and getting visibility, we have more of a tower structure that's facing the courtyard between the two buildings, because you'll really get to see that when you're entering Lake Oswego or Lake Grove from the west. And so we wanted that to be readily identifiable. And then it moves on to a series of gable roofs that relate to the project right next to us. That was the thinking behind it. And aside from a couple of agreements with Evan anyway, in terms of like where I can have stucco and where I can't have stucco, it's not a huge deal to me. So I'm good with it either way, and I'm open to any questions that you might have.
You know, the one thing I wanted to articulate maybe a little better is on the graphic is, oops, I keep hitting the wrong button here. You know, Boones Ferry Road here is right in, right out here. There's a very short queuing distance here, and there's an easement going into this direction to the east. And this direction to the west, where the street extension is proposed, this would be signalized and a much better egress exit point for this property when future developed. So just wanted to clarify that. I think that's the applicant's testimony. Any question?
Thank you. Commissioners, questions? No questions. Well, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
So we'll now move into parties in support. I don't believe there's any waiting in line. Okay, so we'll now move into parties opposed. So first person on my list is Janet Paul from the Lake Grove Neighborhood Association.
Actually have testimony to share.
If you're not testifying in support of, or if you're not representing the actual neighborhood association, you will be limited to 5 minutes unless that time, somebody else cedes time to you.
Well, are you
Representing the neighborhood association.
Is either of you on the board of the neighborhood association testifying tonight in opposition to this project?
But I don't have a lot to say.
Do you represent the board?
Yes.
I'm
But
sorry.
do you represent the board's decision on this? Correct. That's all we're asking.
Okay, and the person, I'm sorry, I don't know your names. So, okay, but are you on the neighborhood association board? The reason I'm asking these questions. Okay, so unless somebody cedes additional time to you, your testimony, because you're not on the neighborhood association, will be limited to 5 minutes? Okay, thank you. Sorry for the confusion. Anyone is welcome to come to the table in support of whoever would like to testify. So whoever, can we call the name again?
I have Janet Paul is first on the list.
Right, and
If you don't want to orally testify, you're not required to. Okay.
if I can cede my time to.
You can cede up to 5 minutes of your time to Courtney.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to, we have somebody through Zoom. This would be Susan Rana.
Okay to go?
Yep, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Hi, my name is Susan. I live on Upper Drive. I live in 4867, so I'm in one of the lots that was created by the developer just to the south of the dotted green lines we just saw on the screen. I did not realize that there was controversy around the house, but now I know. So I submitted written comments on the application, but wanted to show up tonight. And as we know, Lake Grove has seen significant concentration of new developments, and that's absolutely great. Like, that's what Boones Ferry's for, and I think the architecture looks nice, and that's done a really good job. With the two housing projects that are happening, just a short distance, one down the street, one across the street, I understand that each one is reviewed in isolation, right? And it's looked at on paper, and it's meeting all the standards. But I guess what I'm in here talking about is just the adding up of what it means all together. And so I understand we're in here to talk about the trees, but I'm also just talking about the greater point, which is like the significant negative impact. I hear you on commenting on the parking spots, and thank you for the clarification. I think it's also just noting like what is to come with the cut through possibly of West Sunset, which is the street you were looking at coming through, which would come right down the side of the development. There's also just the increased traffic from the housing development at the end of Upper and what's going to happen on the other side of Boones Ferry as well. Less about the parking, because I understand that like that just happens everywhere, and that's a complaint everywhere, I think, across the city, right? And I think if there's any comment on parking, it's just that there's a difference between kind of event day overflow and then the kind of the constant overflow, which is probably what we're going to be seeing here. So with that, it's just the increased traffic that happens on our street. I spend a lot of time outside. So does my neighbor who's in that adjoining house, or that was built illegally as well too, apparently. So we're outside, we have our kids, and people fly by really fast. I have contacted the city engineering department. I probably contact them every year to request speed studies and to understand the criteria for traffic calming measures. But it's really like there's nothing they can do. And that's frustrating as a resident. I know not all of you live in the community or you live nearby, but I think I would gather you've had to have driven past here because it's the way into town. And so we all are very familiar with like how fast people are coming in off the 5 and coming down the street, and then they use Upper Drive as a way to get around Boones Ferry. And I'm sure that will happen even more as we have more development on Boones Ferry. So I understand the tree removal is the specific issue before you tonight. But trees aren't separate from neighborhood character, right? They're part of it. And I think you on the board know that intimately as well too. So removing the trees, adding density, and not solving, there's no solve there for traffic, and there's really no consideration, it seems like. That's just what's really hard to hear as a resident, because I love this part of town, I love living here, and I want to be outside. But when it's unsafe to be outside because there's no traffic calming measures in place, that is a significant negative impact. So thank you for the consideration.
Thank you. Commissioners have any questions? Hearing none, thank you for your opposition speech there. Excuse my language there. But moving next on to the list is John Reeve for in person. Thank you.
My name is John Reeve. I'm the property owner of the property that you just saw to the south of the care property. My address is 13750 Southwest Wilsonville Road in Wilsonville, Oregon. I'd just like to start by saying my property, as you can see on the map, is completely landlocked. It is surrounded by private property and it does not connect to a road, and there's a reason for that. And if you read my comments, you would understand the history of how that was created. In essence, years ago, the city of Lake Oswego came to me and said that in the Westlake Grove Design District, there is supposed to be a roadway that connects all of the properties all the way through parallel to Boones Ferry Road. But unfortunately, there was a pinch point, and at that point, the road could not go through. So the city asked me, will you please change the zoning on your property from residential to commercial? And in doing that, that roadway can go all the way through. So I agreed, we did that, it passed the city council, and they sent that on to the Clackamas County surveyors to record, and the surveyor's office said, no, you can't do it. It's a landlocked piece of property, you can't do this. And the city at that time assured the county and assured me that when someone else developed next to me, I would gain access and I would be able to build on my property. So that's how that came to pass. So now fast forward, we're looking at the CARE project, their property project, and the first thing you see is they have not provided access to me. The roadway does not go down to my property. They obviously do not want me to have access. To the right, to the east of them, the Fitkin property put together a 24-foot roadway and brought it all the way to the edge of the property, as they should. And that is what the CARE property is supposed to do for me, and that is what I am supposed to be doing for the property to the west of me, so that we have access. But instead, what the CARE property has created is what is commonly called a spite strip. A spite strip is a small strip of land in between the property line and the end of the roadway and or utilities. And even if I have a reciprocal access at my property line, it is illegal for me to cross that unincorporated or that undeveloped property and gain access without their approval. So in effect, what they are doing is taking control of the entire road away from the city of Lake Oswego and taking it for themselves. Now they can say, no, you can't cross that area to get to your reciprocal access, and no development can continue to the south or the west past them. Or commonly what people do with a spite strip is say, well, we'll give you access if you give us thousands and thousands of dollars to gain access to the very road that you were supposed to have access to in the first place. And that is why most municipalities find spite strips to be illegal, and they outlaw them and do not allow it because they don't want the problems and the litigation that comes along with it. So most jurisdictions want the road to come all the way down to the edge of the property along with utilities. Now, as you know, I can't build without utilities. I need access and utilities. So if the city of Lake Oswego is not going to make the CARE property bring utilities all the way down to my property, then we can solve that easily by putting into the conditions of approval a 10-foot wide utility access from my property out to Boones Ferry Road. In doing that, I can then come along and at my own expense, put in my own utilities all the way out while they're under construction and prior to them paving. So when they're done, I'm done, I've got access, I've got utilities, and I can build, and therefore the promise that was made to the county and me all those years ago can be fulfilled. So the two things I am asking for you to do is to provide that should be 24-foot road all the way down to my property and a 10-foot wide utility easement from my property out to Boones Ferry Road. In doing that, I can gain access and I can build, and also the property to the west of mine can also now gain access and they can also build. They mentioned that my property is a detriment to them. I have already told them I'm going to have more parking and I will be the recipient of their overflow parking onto my property. So I'm an asset to them, not a liability. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Commissioners have questions?
Yeah, so you have two issues. One is the access easement and the utility easement. I'm assuming they could be if it were to be done, they could be, the access easement, the utilities could be located within the access easement itself.
Correct.
So you wouldn't need 24 feet and then another 10 feet.
Oh, no.
Okay.
That 10 feet's right straight through the
Okay,
24 feet.
that's what I understand. And can you just explain to me, I'm still a little unclear on this spite.
The spites, it's called a spite strip. It has been.
And where is that occurring?
Okay, right
If
at
you-
the edge of my property, and you will see a little gravel strip there. Yes, they are not bringing the roadway and the utilities to my property. So if there's any property between my property and the end of the road, then I cannot legally cross that. Even if I have a reciprocal access, I can't cross that without their permission. They have to allow it. And so far, they haven't wanted to allow me to have access at all.
Maybe this is a question I'll have to ask of staff I don't know if I can ask it now or if we'll have to wait.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate if it makes the most sense now and we all have the context.
Yeah. Could you explain if, it seems to me if this property is going to be approved, that you have to have the full access to the other property. So can you explain if this is really going to be an issue?
Go back to my presentation. Thanks. Pull the slide plan up here. Okay, so this is showing the access right there.
Mm-hmm.
And this allows them to use 2 parking spaces. It'll remove 3 parking spaces when it's installed. It allows them to use 3 parking spaces in the meantime until his property to the south is developed. This is the same process we went through with the El Nido project, the Hacienda Affordable Housing Project on the corner of West Sunset. You know, if you believe that in standards it requires a full connection, then maybe that you could add to the condition of approval. I would note that this is only for a parking lot connection. It's only for vehicle access connection. The standards don't talk about anything to do with utilities. This isn't a public right-of-way. We're not building a street here with utilities. It's a parking lot connection that's required. Here, let me go to the Westlake Grove. Oh, there it is. So this is the map that requires this. And you can see it's only for parking and circulation. It's nothing to do with utilities. There's no standard that requires this developer to provide utilities to the abutting property.
Understood okay, let's go back to the access easement. Just for me, real clearly, will there be access to his property?
Yes, it's required.
And it will not, and the developer right now doesn't have any way to deny that.
Correct. Yeah, it's required with conditions A14 and A15. They have to record the access easement. It's a reciprocal access easement that will allow them to connect, no matter if they don't. He doesn't need their permission. It is going to be a legal document recorded on this property.
Okay.
So I can cross their property without their approval.
Well, it's a reciprocal access easement, so yes, you have the right.
At the property line.
No, it's to benefit your property. That's what it'll say. And it will allow you to connect when you're ready to develop.
So at any time I'm ready to develop, I can go ahead and they cannot stop me. That's what you're saying.
With that 20-foot easement, yes, that's correct. They can connect.
Okay.
All of the properties within the Westlake Grove are subject to this parking and circulation plan if it's shown on this. And so their property is providing reciprocal access to the east, and it also has to provide it to the south. And then your property, when you develop, which is, again, I want to remind the commission, not in front of you tonight.
Correct.
You will have to provide a reciprocal access easement further to the west. So every development application is subject to review under this parking and circulation plan in the Westlake Grove. And if it is triggered, then that is recorded and required and recorded as a part of that development application.
So I thought if they did not come all the way down to my property right now, then they could stop me later because they did not do that.
They cannot.
That's not the case. Okay,
The
good.
easement supersedes the development in place at that time.
But
So-
that easement is only for parking access.
It's for
Vehicle access.
circulation.
Circulation.
Vehicle
Circulation.
circulation.
Access,
So
correct.
what about his utilities?
That's going to be something that the developers will have to work out separately. Utilities
okay,
are
but-
not addressed for, again, tonight, we are looking at the care property, this triangular property alone.
Yeah.
And Evan reviewed the staff report, in the staff report, talked about the provision of utilities for this project. For future projects, they will address their necessary utilities at that time. And if provision of utilities is required with cooperation with an abutting property owner, that will be dealt with at that time. Again, we're not talking about those properties tonight.
But can I address that? Because the city asked me to create that unusual property that is landlocked. So all of the codes that you currently have do not allow you to go ahead and say, well, you can put a utility easement through somebody else's property. That's got to be done between the owners. But if the owners don't want to do it, I'll never get it. I won't be able to build because the city asked me to create that unusual property, so there should be some way for them to also say, yes, they promised me that I could have access and build, and that's a simple way to do it that does not affect the care property because I would be putting in the utilities myself.
So what Mr. Reeves is referring to is a rezone application that happened, I believe, about 10, 12 years ago, maybe a little bit
Yes.
further in the past. And when that larger piece of property, basically Mr. Reeves' current property, then the two properties south of that are zoned residential, the Mr. Reeves' property, that kind of larger purple square, was rezoned and incorporated into the Westlake Grove Design District. This district is fairly unusual in that it does require cooperation between property owners. There's a lot of unusually shaped and unusually sized properties, and it's kind of a part of that design district that property owners will have to cooperate together to develop them. Again, each of them, whatever project is coming through, whether it's a singular property or a consolidation of various properties, you work together to kind of make this circulation plan, design plan, all of that, potential extension of the West Sunset Drive, you work together to make that happen. So again, the only thing we're looking at tonight is Mr. Kerr's property at 16650 Boones Ferry Road. And when applications further come in, that's when we look at all of the provisions of necessary utilities, easements, design, frontage improvements, everything like that.
Thank you for your clarification.
But if this property goes through and I do not have a utility easement, how am I going to create that later? I'm out
That
of
can be
luck.
something we can talk to you about separately. It's not subject to review tonight. It's not in front of the DRC tonight.
Mr. Reed, what kind of documentation do you have of these transactions 10 or 12 years ago that led to this subdivision of what had been a single lot?
This went through the city council,
Yes.
the planning commission and the city council, and they all voted unanimously to go ahead and do this.
Again, I want to
Well,
clarify for the commission that it was a rezone only. It wasn't a development application.
And
Each
that's what I'm
development
asking. What kind of documentation, even emails or letters of exchange between you and the county and the city saying, well, you know, we'll subdivide it in the following way, we'll get it permitted in the following way. Do you have any documentation that talks about
have
or
documentation.
alludes to you having rights of access to that landlocked piece?
Yes. And I'm sure in the staff report at that time, it talked about that, and in the planning commission, that's what the staff came up with, is that, yes, that was there so that everyone would have access. And that's why they went ahead and voted unanimously to go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Evan, have you reviewed those files, and is such documentation in there?
So again, I just want to clarify that we're not looking at Mr. Reeves' property. That was not reviewed as a part of this land use application. What was reviewed was a future connection to his property through the subject property tonight, which is 16650. So no, Planner Fransted did not review those rezone documents. Again, when Mr. Reeves' property comes forward for redevelopment, we will look at it then and ensure that in compliance with the development standards and the Westlake Grove design standards, that all access and utilities are provided as necessary and as required.
So if there is a proposal made to develop and it is discovered that in 2014 there was an exchange that involved the city or the county and the landowner, and that exchange implied or stated that there would be access, that somehow access would be provided at this future time. Is that?
So I feel like I'm repeating myself, so I apologize for that. What you're looking at on the screen is the Westlake Grove Design District. It is a figure from that overlay that specifically requires reciprocal access throughout the properties. That's the red dashed line. So that is what the code requires, and that's what will be reviewed. That circulation, they're not, the red dash line is not 100% in place, obviously, for this subject property. It's a little bit north of that property line, so it's subject to review at the time of development. But with the rezone, this figure came into play and is now imposed, that entire overlay is imposed on Mr. Reeves' property. So the rezone said in the future, with a development application, we will look at development of this property and reciprocal access to abutting properties to the east and west, possibly north, however that ends up working out, just like we do with every other development application. So there's no need to go back to the rezone, to do discovery, to look at communication back and forth there, because it came into place with the rezone and the designation of this property as a part of the Westlake Grove Design District.
Right, and I understand all of that. And in your view, reciprocal access means traffic, pedestrians, and utilities.
It means parking and circulation. That typically implies vehicular circulation.
Yeah, I know.
But again, there are also pedestrian circulation standards, both in the Westlake Grove Design District and on properties themselves in the development standards. So again, when those properties come up for development, we will be reviewing it for compliance with all applicable standards at that time.
Yes.
I have a two-part clarification request for the access, reciprocal access easement. Does circulation imply construction access to the parcel on the south that's relevant to the current testimony? And is there, I understand that when the parcel to the south comes up for development, the current development that's up for review, it's incumbent on them to provide that reciprocal access. Is it time-bound? I see that there's a curb right now. So is there a time frame in which all these things can happen without undue ownership to the next development that comes up on the south?
So the easement will apply to the property. It will run with the property regardless of who owns the property. Once this easement is recorded, it would, in compliance with these standards, it would take a modification of this approved DR permit and a revocation of that easement in order to get rid of it. So it is in place in perpetuity on this property owner. And whether or not it can be used at the time of construction, access easements are access easements. I don't believe that there's going to be any language in there about it being specific to construction or specific to future use once it is developed. That's not typical of our access easements. Those would be more considered a temporary construction easement.
All right, thank you.
All right, well, thank you,
Quickly,
Mr. Reeves.
Oh, one last thing. So just want to review. So there's no way that they can stop me from having access. When I come for access, they've got to give it to me.
The access easement is going to be for the benefit of you across their property. You're the owner of that property that you currently own right now to the care property, regardless of who owns it in the future. It is a reciprocal access easement between the properties that runs with the properties.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next on the list, I have Michael Coyne.
Good evening. My name is Mike Coyne, and I'm representing the Boulder, the Sunset Crossing properties across the street owned by Ruth Coyne and Andrea Angel. Just reiterates a previous point, just talking about the burden being put on the adjacent properties. I understand there's no parking requirement and can understand that that is part of the code, but the current project, when you consider 3 parking spots are going away for that access point, has 3.3 parking spots per 1,000 square feet. Standard in the area is between 4 and 5 parking spots per 1,000 feet. With the current code, you could build a building and have 0 parking spots, but that's not feasible. So there's really been no tenant mix study done to understand what kind of tenants there's going to be in this building. If it's medical, it would likely require close to 5, and they're providing 3.3 at the end of the day when you adjust for residential. So obviously that's not a code issue, but certainly a consideration with respect to the burden put on adjacent property owners, as well as traffic considerations with respect to people trying to find parking when there's no parking available on site. So that's our concern as a collective group of adjacent commercial property owners, and just like that to be addressed or considered.
Great. Go ahead. Oh, did you have a question for?
No, I guess I go back to, then you need to talk to your representative in Salem, because it's not Lake Oswego who's making these rules.
I understand. That also doesn't
So
speak to
I just
the.
can't let this slide every time, Lake Oswego gets blasted with, we don't
No,
have
I'm not
enough
blasting
parking.
anybay in Lake, so I'm just
I
like,
know.
it needs to be considered, especially given
But
the fact you had a
we have no consideration
50
of it.
50-person
Your state
residential.
representative does.
Say again?
Go down to your state representative and tell them that this is unacceptable. That's how you'll get this changed.
Fair enough.
I have done that, and they
So
ignore me.
I'm sorry,
Excuse me.
if you want to testify, you do need
I'm a
to.
property owner as well. Okay.
So we have addressed that situation, but, and I know we can't affect the 20 units that were put in without any parking considerations, and the 50-unit building, or 50-unit residential property that has 40 parking units, but
I know,
it's
because
putting
I
a
was on
major.
planning when they did that.
Yeah, so.
And those folks along Madrona and Sunset, they're going to have nothing but parking all up and down in front of their houses.
And exactly, and our property is adjacent to Sunset, and I guarantee we're gonna have many people towed out of that property, and puts the burden on
The
us to
state
monitor
doesn't
it.
care.
I'm aware.
And
But
that's a shame.
I
That's a
understand,
shame.
I understand. Any other comments or suggestions on going after state representatives?
Thank you, Mr. Coyne.
Great, thank you.
Okay, now the last one on the list will be Courtney Blommer.
To clarify, if you could formally cede time, up to 10 minutes, whoever is ceding time, if you want to. That was what we were discussing earlier.
I'm still confused about the time. I think I can get through it in 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
But I do have the blessing of the Neighborhood Association Board, and she's representing them. Is that right?
And I'll say a few words, but.
You want to go first?
Okay.
A little off format.
I'm sorry.
Clarify, these are 2 separate testimonies. And so if we need to stick with the rules and proceedings for public meetings.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, it's a bit bureaucratic. So I will, and I'm sorry, it was Courtney Bloomer?
Yeah. Blummer,
So
yeah.
I'm going to provide you 5 minutes, and it sounds like you can get through your testimony in that time, and then we'll take questions from the commission to address your testimony. And then, I'm sorry, one more time.
I'm Janet Paul.
Janet Paul. So Ms. Paul, once you are ready to testify, we'll repeat the same thing. You will have the full 10 minutes,
Okay.
but you don't have to use all of that.
Oh,
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Courtney Blummer. I'm a member of the Lake Grove Neighborhood Association, a resident of Upper Drive, and I own property adjacent to the applicant's property. I'm here tonight to offer testimony in opposition to the removal of 30 trees, not 22, marked for removal in the tree protection schedule in the application for the property at 16650 Boones Ferry. The city's tree code clearly states its purpose is to preserve the wooded character of the city of Lake Oswego and to protect trees as a natural resource. This application should be evaluated against that standard. Under LOC 55.02.080, approval of a Type 2 tree removal permit requires that removal will not have a significant negative impact on the character or aesthetics of the neighborhood. It also states that the removal does not involve alterations to the distinctive features or continuity of the neighborhood skyline as viewed from all public streets and properties within 300 feet of the property. And as a reminder, the code also states that their removal does not involve a tree that serves as a visual screen between a residential zone and an abutting non-residential zone, or between a low-density residential zone and a medium or high-density residential zone, or between a medium and high-density residential zone. Based on the criteria outlined in sections 2 and 3 of LOC Tree Code, it is difficult to see how these standards can be met. Specifically, the trees 36, 31, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, and 46 are highly visible more than 300 feet in all directions. And the removal would alter the continuity of the neighborhood skyline, which the code explicitly protects. I submitted evidence of the distances that these trees are visible in my written testimony. I documented visibility from approximately 80 feet, 300 feet, and 2,460 feet, which is a half mile. The photos are proof that removal of these trees would clearly and significantly alter the character and aesthetics of the Lake Grove neighborhood. The scale of removal, which is actually 30 trees according to the tree protection schedule, represents a substantial change, not an incidental one. At least 17 of these trees would be considered significant, further triggering protections under the code. Trees 8, 25, 26, 28, 29, and 30 don't meet the criteria for substantial trees, but they do provide an established and effective tree screen between commercial property and the residential properties adjacent along the length of the back property line, including my property. These trees should be protected under Section 3, which clearly outlines the importance of preserving a visual barrier between residential and non-residential zone. Over the years, I have seen how repeated approvals for tree removal, particularly in neighborhoods like First Edition and now Lake Grove, have cumulatively changed the character of our city. Each individual application may meet code, but together they result in the steady loss of protective canopy and neighborhood identity. This incremental loss matters. Lake Grove has already absorbed substantial development and tree loss in recent years. Recent nearby projects have also pushed overflow parking onto adjacent streets and private lots, affecting traffic, safety, and property values. The cumulative impact on neighborhood character is real and already being felt. This proposal would accelerate the change further. The code does not ask whether removal is convenient for development. It asks whether it avoids significant negative impacts. In this case, that threshold appears to be exceeded. This site does not support this design, and mitigation trees are not a reasonable solution. I respectfully urge the Commission to deny or require redesign of this proposal to preserve these trees to the greatest extent possible. Preserving them would represent a meaningful step toward balancing development with the stewardship of the natural assets that define Lake Grove. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners?
I also have the photos if it's helpful.
Those were in the record, so those are available.
They're in the record, yes.
I have no questions. Thank you for your testimony. I'll now turn it over to Janet Paul.
Hello, I'm Janet Paul. I represent the Lake Grove Neighborhood Association. I'm a member of the board. We have conferred and do agree with Courtney's assessment of the character of Lake Grove, that we want to maintain the tree canopy, the large trees that represent Lake Grove. Otherwise, as somebody pointed out, it's Lake Meadow if we don't have the trees. So to us, it's very important that we maintain the old trees, because the mitigation trees are going to take, another 100 years to get to the point that the old trees represent. So the minimum number of trees that that need to be removed, we hope will be the case, rather than taking out the majority of trees on any lot. So that's the stance of the neighborhood association. We just feel very strongly that both, the character of the neighborhood and the living creatures that live in the trees will be harmed by getting rid of this many trees on a relatively small lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Do we have anybody else online? Okay, so there's no more in line for public testimony, so
You have a chance for rebuttal.
yes. Would the applicant like to have the opportunity
Can't wait.
to rebuttal the comments?
You'll be limited to
But
5.
it'll be short.
You'll be limited to 5 minutes total.
Okay. Thank you very much. And again, I wanted to reiterate that the applicant and the owner have worked closely with Evan and the staff and agree with the conditions of approval and staff report. I did want to address, and if you could bring my graphic up real quick, Mr. Reeves' testimony was inaccurate and also confusing. You may see just south of the green square, 4867 and 4845 address. Those lots were partitioned in a non-conforming and illegal way. Not sure how that happened, but it happened, which provided zero access to his remaining parcel. So we do plan on providing access as required by the conditions of approval. There is no spite strip. Spite strips are against the state law, and they used to be used maybe 40 years ago, but they're not used anymore. And we don't have that, and so we are providing access. Our biggest concern is, people taking our parking spaces and so forth. With regard to utilities, Mr. Reeves needs to understand engineering. We are uphill from his property. Utilities flow downhill. And so he's got a problem that he has to solve himself. And unless he puts in a pump station or something of that nature to pump it up to Boones Ferry Road. So I just want to make sure that everybody was aware of the utility situation and our view on the, non-conforming land division and then access out to the future substreet. So anyway.
Sunset extension.
Sunset extension, thank you. Any questions?
No questions.
Ralph, you have anything? No.
I don't have anything to add, no.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Turn it over to Attorney Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Before the closing of the evidentiary public hearing, anyone who testified may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony, which at the Commission's discretion will be accomplished by leaving the record open for new oral or written submissions or by continuing the hearing. Is there a request for a continuance from anyone in the audience? Seeing none. Anyone online? No. All right. Unless waived by the applicant, the commission will allow the applicant at least 7 days after the record is closed for all other parties to submit final written arguments in support of the application. The information shall be considered part of the record, but shall not include any new evidence. Would the applicant like to take that period or waive that period? Sure. The applicant has the option to submit additional written argument, not new testimony or evidence, but additional written argument for up to 7 days after the record is closed to all other parties. But you can waive that if you choose, and the commission will proceed with a decision. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Miller. Now I would like to close the public hearing for LU 25-0036 and would like to direct the commissioners into deliberations. Shall we begin?
I'll go ahead and start. And I understand the concerns, particularly in regards to the trees. I think we all, as you pointed out, preservation of trees is one of the most significant, I think, attributes of the city's code in Lake Oswego. At the same time, and I think as staff pointed out, code also does allow for development on properties. And from everything I've seen here and what staff has shown, the area of development within the site, and again, it is a very unusual site, which makes for siting of everything very, very compacted. But all of that fits within our city code regulations. So from my standpoint, I don't see any reason why this wouldn't be approved.
I would have to dovetail on that it meets the requirements under today's trees code, but in 4 or 5 months, it probably would not, based on what we learned last week.
However, we're dealing with it today. Yeah.
Any other commentary? I have a question for Evan, if I can. So, in the opposition, it was Ms. Blommer that had stated that it wasn't in line with the tree codes for, I believe she was a section 2, or she said section 2 and section 3, correct? Or 3A, but in 3B, correct me if I'm wrong, it was 3B, you found conditions of acceptance.
Yeah, if we go back to my presentation again, I'll pull up the criteria.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, this is the third criterion of the type 2 tree removal. So she was saying that basically the criterion 3 doesn't met because some of these trees serve as a visual screen between the residential properties to the south. Some are visible within 300 feet, so it disrupts the neighborhood skyline. And I think some are significant too, in general. So that 3 wasn't met. But as I pointed out in my presentation, there's an exception that says that if there's no alternatives to removal, and alternatives have been considered, then it exempts criterion 3. And that's what staff has found that they meet.
Thank you. That is the only comment I had. Somebody please move to motion.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve LU 26-0036 with conditions as noted in the staff report.
Two 5-0.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes. Excuse me.
Second?
I second that motion.
Chair Lindstrom,
Yes.
Commissioner Dews,
Yes.
Commissioner Bates. Bates, oh, sorry. Commissioner Salunke,
Yes.
Commissioner Leek,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sangri,
Yes.
6-0.
Thank you. I'd like to note that that prior to the tentative decision, applicant has an opportunity to raise objections if new conditions, I guess I'm behind the tail here, right, with saying this one. If new conditions of approval are proposed by commission, and applicant, do you have any objection to the conditions? If not,
There are no conditions, so we
Yeah.
can move on.
Perfect. Now I'll turn it over to Attorney Miller.
So the motion has received a majority vote. This is the tentative decision. The final decision will be made upon the adoption of the written findings, which will take place.
Yes, so written findings will take place on May 4th.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you. Now we will move into item number 5, which was schedule review and management update.
Thank you, Chair. As noted, we will have findings to adopt for 2 land use hearings on the 4th. The findings, the draft findings, and hopefully the minutes will be available to you the Friday before that. I don't have a specific date, but just our general practice. I don't have any other hearings that are close to complete or have tentative public hearings scheduled. Or, sorry, I don't have any other projects with hearings scheduled yet. I will keep you up to date. But right now, after May 4th, we are looking at no further dates so far. That changes on a, feels like weekly basis, so I will let you know in my usual practice. We do have the option of returning to adopt the findings for both of these projects on the 4th at 6 p.m. and to do it via Zoom. So if you'd like to do so, let me know.
Yes.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, 6 p.m. Via Zoom or an online hearing for the adoption of findings for LU 25-0045 and LU 25-0036. Thank you so much. I do have a request from the city manager's office, from the city, to please, thank you, Evan, participate in the 2026 Urban and Community Forestry Workshop Series. It's a series of free workshops available to the public. So we're just doing a little promotion here tonight for people on the commission or anyone paying attention online. There's a tree planting on Saturday, April 25th in Westlake Park. There is a tree pruning on Saturday, April 25th in Foothills Park at 10 a.m. There's a wildfire safe landscapes workshop on Saturday, May 2nd at 10 a.m. in Waluga Park East. And then there is also a workshop for preparing for the emerald ash borer. And that's on Saturday, June 13th, 10 a.m., also at Foothills Park. So if anybody wants further information, you can go to the city's website and navigate to the planning page, website, and I believe that there are links there for pre-registration, further details on all of these workshops and pre-registration. And I'm sorry, I can't give more detailed information. This isn't very clear. If you want to reach out to the planner on duty, you can reach out to planning@lakeoswego.city or call 503-635-0290 for more information about any of those upcoming workshops regarding urban forestry. So with that blurb, I don't have anything else. Unless anyone has questions for me, upcoming.
I have a quick question. Did you, just for clarification, did you say evergreen ash war?
It probably sounded like that.
Emerald ash
The
borer.
emerald,
Okay, sorry.
yeah, it's a nuisance bug that is taking out all of our Oregon ash.
Oh,
It's a
perfect.
new invasive bug. It's very fast spreading. And we're trying to get ahead of it with removal of Oregon ashes, a preemptive removal. And there's a lot of concern about removing the trees, how you handle the trees themselves, because it can spread it, what time of year you're removing them, how you're disposing of the wood. There's a lot of concern about it. I think that there have been some outbreaks close to here. I'm not sure if there are any in the city of Lake Oswego itself, but with Oregon ashes, that's one of our very prominent native trees. It's all over our parks and natural area and in our private properties. So it's a big problem and something, again, we're trying to be proactive about.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm sorry, but
That's fine.
Brains all over the place. Last question, is there any updates you can share with the commission for responsiveness with the open city council seat?
I don't have any further information about that. I believe that applications, I can't even, I'm so sorry, I can't even tell you if applications are still being accepted. But yes, there is, Councilor Rapp did resign, and so there is an open council seat, and I believe that's going to be up for election in May, this coming May election. And I think for more information, I would look on the city council webpage. There's probably a good link there, or check the city manager's webpage.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to thank everybody for their time and thank staff for their reports and their participation, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much, Commission.